No, I still think the defense is a work in progress, to say the least, but I think the offense is as well.
Welcome back, live post-game show. Mark Farzetta, Derek Gunn, Devin Caney with you, and joining us from Denver right now to give us all the ins and outs of what took place after the game. And he's brought to us by Mesa Law and Associates. Need a tough injury lawyer called Mesa and Associates. John McMullen joins us from Denver. What's up, John?
How are you guys? Big win.
We are
predicted that. I think somebody did. I'm not pointing fingers, but
was that you? Did you predict a win, John? John, did you say they were going to win this game?
Did.
Oh, look at you!
I want proof. I don't believe it. I want proof.
Oh, it's all over the place, TK. Philly Boys, Sports Illustrated, JAKIB Media, all over.
All over the place.
Multiple places.
John, look, we're here today to celebrate you first and foremost. But let me ask this question. It's a serious question, brother. Dallas Goedert, any news on him after the game? Any news on any other injuries that the Eagles suffered today?
With Dallas, it's a concussion, so he is going to be in the protocol moving forward. So, that's one of those things where they're so unpredictable and there's different levels. And you saw somebody like Josh Sweat just kind of skate through the protocol. For other people, more serious concussions, it's a little bit more difficult. It was, sort of Dallas has been playing so well, and it was playing so well early in this game. You kind of thought, uh-oh, here we go. This is going to really affect the Eagles. And I think it did for a short period of time, but they were able to recover, and I think they played certainly their best game of the year offensively, and then defensively they were able to play complementary football. Look, the reason I picked the Eagles to win because I knew Denver was going to be without both of their starting offensive tackles. You can't win in this league if you can't block people, and that's what happened to the Broncos. They were too banged up. The Eagles, to their credit, were able to take advantage of it and even had some special teams in the blocked field goal. So goes back sort of reminiscent of that Carolina win.
Hey, John, I want you to clear up something because Nick Sirianni said something in his press conference. In all my years of covering football, I've never heard this before. And he made reference to the fact,
fumble? Country fumble?
The difference between a city fumble and a country fumble. Can you explain this, please?
Yeah, I liked it. I actually liked it. So
I did too.
A city fumble is basically, when it's crowded, when you're in the pile, just fall on the football. Country fumble is if you're outside, the ball's live and nobody's around it. You can try to scoop it and score. And I joked with Darius Slay after he kind of turned a city fumble into a country fumble and then took it home because he picked up the fumble, dropped it, and then took it to the house. So, and that was the play that really sealed the game for the Eagles. Because remember, that was a 4th and 1, and Denver was down 20-13. They were moving the football. The Eagles sort of came out in the second half, and that was the one, if you're going to nitpick, they didn't show really much of a sense of urgency offensively, and they sort of went back to their prior identity before this 4-game stretch of running the football. It was 3 and out, and then it was the interception, which wasn't Jalen's fault. That was Kenny Gainwell didn't pick up a pass rush and wasn't able to get through on his throw, turned into an interception. But Denver was coming. They were coming back, and that play completely crushed them. And I think it was the turning point, kind of sealed the game.
I'm starting to think that Nick Sirianni needs to write his own football terminology book, just with, fertilizer means this, flowers mean this. So John, when we were starting the show, we were talking about the defense, and Mark said that Gannon is out of the doghouse, at least for him. I kind of disagree. I think he still has a lot to prove. What's your take on Gannon and how he improved the defense going into this game?
No, I think you're right, Devin. I don't think it's necessary. if everybody's down their 2 starting offensive tackles, I think he's out of the woods. But that's not going to happen every week. And you're going to have more difficult time trying to corral different offenses in this league at particular times. Now, we know the Eagles are through the difficult part of their schedule, and that's a positive. But, no, I still think the defense is a work in progress, to say the least. But I think the offense is as well. I do think that people are kind of over the top on criticizing Jonathan Gannon. I mean, at times this team has struggled against good offenses and really good quarterbacks, but they've also had some good games, and people kind of, want to sweep them under the rug as well. You can't necessarily do that either, but there's always the context of who you're playing. And Teddy Bridgewater was under siege today because Garrett Polis wasn't out there, and they were down 3 starters actually on the offensive line. So, we talk about the Eagles, and this is a credit to Jeff Stoutland, because they put in Jack Driscoll and Nate Herbig at times and Andre Dillard and on and on and on. And they're at least competent. They're not great. They're not Brandon Brooks or Isaac Sayamalo, but they're competent. You see other teams, and, man, they just completely fall apart. And you saw that with Denver today.
On that note of Jonathan Gannon being aggressive or going to have success against an offensive line that's banged up, one thing I will give credit, if we look at the Lions game, for instance, John, and we say if they take some of these schemes and throw them at the Chargers, they'll work. And they did. Then they took some of the schemes that they used against the Chargers, used them in this game, and they worked, offensively speaking. But from a defensive perspective, I loved 1st and goal from the 10-yard line, 9-yard line, and you have Teddy Bridgewater drop back to pass, and 6 rushers are going after him in the backfield. They forced the errant throw, which was thrown over the head of Williams, who was in the flat there. I think it was Slay coming up the sideline, and they actually forced the mistake. A couple of plays later, the Eagles end up blocking the field goal, which is a hat tip to the special teams unit, obviously. But that's what I'd love to see more from Jonathan Gannon, is the aggression, rushing 6, not just 4 or 5, and forcing the mistake as opposed to waiting for the mistake to happen.
Well, yeah, everybody wants aggression until they go over the top and, go 80 yards.
Yeah, and then that happens in football sometimes. But when you rarely ever show that aggression, I'd like to see it every once in a while.
No, I get it. And there's a happy medium, and you have to do it at times. I mean, if you look at Miami beating Baltimore, I always go back to, Derek will probably remember what everybody calls the Joe Webb game.
Yeah.
I actually call that the Antoine Winfield game, because the Vikings blitzed Antoine Winfield off the slot and just made it hell for Michael Vick. I'm waiting for somebody to do that to Jalen Hurts, to be honest. Miami just did it to Lamar Jackson.
That's right.
I think it's coming at some point, but again, it morphs from week to week. And I think that's, sort of the positive of Nick Sirianni. He's learning as he goes. I think Jonathan Gannon is learning as he goes. He saw an opponent he could be a little bit more aggressive with, and he was a little bit more aggressive with it. If you're playing Tom Brady, this is probably not the best week, because he might have had his worst game in ages. But typically, if you're playing Tom Brady and you're going to blitz 6 at him, he's just going to pick you apart. He knows where it's coming from. He's going to throw right behind it, and you're going to look silly. So I do think you have to put the context of who you're playing into it.
Real quick, I just want to say that the Ravens were blitzed 24 times by the Dolphins secondary. That's only counting the amount of times they sent secondary out. 24 blitzes from the secondary on Lamar Jackson. Sorry, Gunnar, go ahead.
No, you haven't seen 24 blitzes from the Eagles secondary all season long, and you probably won't see it happen. But from the department of things that make you go, Hey, John, in the post-game press conference, you asked Jalen Hurts, was this his best game? And he said, is that what they're saying? that was his answer to you? Is that what they're saying?
Yeah.
Well, what did he elaborate? How did he elaborate beyond that?
I think he's surprised by some of the how people take, because he had statistical success, and this goes when he doesn't have statistical success. He's very, I always talk about, he's very even keeled, so he's not going to be over the moon because he had a good first half. But I do think, it's pretty obvious it was his best half of football so far this season. And it's a launching point, but I just don't think he thinks that way. And I think he thinks it's interesting when people think that way. But, that's how you're judged in the NFL is results. And he had the results today. And, to him, it's more about the process, which I get. And I hate that term because the Sixers have ruined it in Philadelphia. But,
True.
Jalen believes in a different type of process. And he thinks as long as he's improving, everything is headed in the right direction. And from his standpoint, I think that's a very good way to look at things. But I do think you have to be realistic as well. And you're going to be judged by results on the field, statistics, wins and losses, and all that stuff as well. And today was tremendous, especially in the first half.
What does Jalen Hurts say? The only stat that matters is win or loss. So you'd think he'd be pretty happy with the stats after this game. So I know Mark and Deegan are going to give me a hard time for asking this, but we're being very positive this show. It's a weird feeling. But John, I want to know if you have any, or if anyone in the post game had any critiques or things that they need to improve upon. I mean, we still don't have a win at home, and our schedule is looking pretty easy moving forward. So, how do the Eagles ensure that we get some more wins?
Well, they do have to figure out a way to win at home. I mean, it starts next week with New Orleans, and Trevor Siemian's going to be the starting quarterback. So it's not, what you think of the Saints typically. So it's another opportunity. For whatever reason, the Eagles had some very difficult opponents, obviously, at home early in the season. But at some point, you got 4 wins on the road, none at home. When, if you look at the Doug Peterson era until the final year, they generally dominated at Lincoln Financial Field. So it's been a sharp change, and that obviously has to improve. And I think everybody understands that. Maybe part of the reason is there's a little bit more pressure, to be honest, to get off the schneid, so to speak, at home. And until they do it, I think it's going to be one of those things where it's really, really difficult. But as far as in this game, I mean, look, everybody was happy. Nobody was pointing. There were a couple things, on the interception, Kenny Gainwell didn't pick up in pass protection. Obviously, you had the Quez Watkins drop. That should have been a touchdown. That was a great throw by Jalen Hurts. I mentioned coming out in the second half, I thought they lost a little bit of sense of urgency, and they had the 3-and-out, and then the interception. They gave Denver a small opportunity to get back in the game. They probably want to tighten that up. Nick mentioned some of the penalties on defense, specifically the pre-snap ones. I know everybody's going to kill Derek Barnett, another personal foul, and he deserved that one. That's just, what they're calling. He did that sort of extra jump on Teddy Bridgewater at the end. Right. You can't do that in today's NFL. So small stuff like that. But, I mean, they dominated this game. And, it's interesting. How do you sit Jordan Howard? I mean, Miles Sanders is coming back. He's already on social media saying he's ready to go.
He was on the sidelines tonight.
3 weeks. Yeah. And, he's obviously healthy, and the Eagles can bring him off injured reserve this week. I don't know how you sit Jordan Howard. They are a better football team with Jordan Howard. He's not a better football player than Miles Sanders, but they're a better team because of the style of football he plays.
John, what did Lane Johnson say about Jordan Howard? I know he was very complimentary after the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's his physical approach. And, I think Nick was very upset earlier. In fact, I know when his team was portrayed as being not physical, getting beaten up, getting out physical week in and week out. And he wanted to change that thought process pretty quickly. That's one of the reasons TJ Edwards is playing at linebacker, and he's just blowing people up. And it's one of the reasons Jordan Howard has been so effective on the offensive side of the ball. again, these guys are maybe not the most skilled players, but they bring a presence that the Eagles didn't have without them.
Two quick things for you, John, for me. How do you think they sort out that running back room? Did Gainwell get taken out? Does Jordan Howard get taken out? Do you think how Boston Scott, like when Miles Sanders does come back, how do you see that actually playing out?
I think Boston's going to be the odd man out. Unfortunately, and I don't think he deserves it. The Eagles, Kenny Gainwell hasn't played as much. They had that role. I think people were a little bit confused. They were behind so much early in the season. He was the third down back, the hurry up back. So, and they were playing, so much hurry up because they were trying to get back in the game. He played a ton. And then when they started taking control of games by running the football, they never wanted him to be the RB1, so to speak. And that's why it's not that Jordan Howard and Boston Scott jumped him. It's that's not his role. So he'll keep that role, and Miles Sanders will come in and sort of take the Boston Scott role as the starter. And I think Jordan Howard will keep his role as sort of that physical back. But if you go all the way back to his first year here, it was Miles' rookie season. If you guys remember, Miles started that season as the starting running back, and he wasn't that effective. And then Jordan Howard got his opportunity, played really well. I think it was against Buffalo and then Chicago, his old team. And he was the starter. I mean, he won the job and he was the starter. And then he got hurt. He got that weird stinger injury and he was out basically for the rest of the season. And Miles came back in and played well and took over the job. I think we're seeing a similar thing happen now. You can't take him off the field. Now, if that changes next week and he doesn't play well against New Orleans or changes moving forward, then you could say, all right, we got to go back to Miles Sanders. But until that happens, you can't take him off the field.
Wow.
Yeah, I want to ask you about a solution for another position, and that is wide receivers. Devonte Smith obviously had an incredible game, and I found some fun stats on Jalen Reagor. Jalen Reagor had
there are no fun stats.
Yeah, right.
Negative 14 yards in his last two touches. Devonte Smith now has more career receiving yards than Jalen Reagor. What is the solution for him? He's so unproductive. I feel like all he does is he doesn't even contribute much on special teams. But, has that been acknowledged? And then, of course, we had that pass that should have been a catch from Quez Watkins. Aside from Devonte Smith, is there any concern over lack of production from our receivers?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of concern because you need more than Devonte, and Devonte's playing great, and more so than the first touchdown, which was a great individual play. Patrick Surtain had great coverage as well. He just got the football in a 50-50 situation. The routes, the other receptions he had, the separation he gets is amazing as a route runner. You're talking 4 or 5 yards, and you just don't see that typically in the NFL. So, you set him aside. I often say he's another species of wide receiver we haven't seen in a long time in Philadelphia. They need a complement, and they don't have a complement. But Quez Watkins has clearly lapped and taken over the number 2 role for Jalen Reagor, and they try to get him involved with some manufactured touches. It's not working. I hate to do it. It's so early in his career, and I'm not saying he can't be rescued somewhere else, but the Eagles are probably going to have to go in a different direction next season, and they need to get a veteran receiver as a complement. No more draft picks. You got the draft pick. You finally got it with Devonte Smith. Now they need a veteran guy that knows how to play to sort of complement at that particular position. And I heard Derek talking about free agency and draft picks. They'll have plenty of money to go out and get free agents, so you can get an Alshon Jeffrey type. That's the way they have to tackle wide receiver in the offseason.
Were you pro OBJ? Sorry, Deegan.
No, it's okay.
No, I mean, I don't think OBJ fits this team for what he wants or what they want from a culture standpoint, from what the Eagles want, but from he wants to be with a contender, and the Eagles aren't there. So they're not in a position to be in the conversation for guys like that right now. He wouldn't have wanted to come here, and I don't think I know they didn't have any interest in him, a lot because they know he didn't want to come here, to be honest.
I know a lot of people are down on Jalen Reagor, and in some cases rightfully so, but when you look at his looks, his touches, you can't find out what he is or is not when he's only getting 1 or 2 looks a game. And I understand you have to make the most of your opportunities, but to get a true evaluation of what he is or is not, you've got to give him more looks. You have to. And because right now everybody's down on Jalen, and I understand why, and I've been down on him as well. But you'd hate to see this team give up on him too soon and have him go somewhere and come back and bite you in the butt, especially if he goes in a division. You know, I know we're still frustrated that we took Jalen instead of Justin Jefferson. I get that. But he's here now. He's played for 2 different quarterbacks now. Nick Sirianni goes to him maybe one look in this game. Okay, in previous games, I see a lot of 1s, maybe 2s. You know, that's not how you develop a wide receiver when the bullets are flying for real. And I understand your star is Devonte Smith. Quez Watkins has the capability of being a very good complementary number 2. But this kid was a first-round draft pick, and you've got to do a fairer evaluation of him, because in Howie Roseman's case, how much more egg can you take on the face for blowing first and second round picks, which he's done like every other year. So I think somewhere along the line, you've got to give him a better evaluation before you decide what he is or is not.
Yeah, I hear you, Degon. That's where I was at the beginning of the season.
Right.
But I understand. I mean, you're right about Howie Roseman. Howie Roseman wanted Jalen Reagor to succeed. Believe me, he wanted Jalen Reagor to succeed. And when you talk about fair evaluation, well, you know, Jalen played himself off, the rotation. Nick Sirianni, he was the number 2 receiver to start the season. And Quez Watkins took over for him, not just because of what happens in games, but because of what happens in practice as well. And to be honest, if the Eagles had anything behind Jalen Reagor, and they don't, you're talking about Greg Ward, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside got banged up again today. I mean, they're not going to push anybody. So in a lot of ways, he's getting more playing time than he probably deserves because the depth is so bad. I often talk about, trying to serve 2 masters, and, the Eagles are in a transition phase, rebuilding phase, whatever you want to call it. Well, Nick Sirianni is in the guts of a season now. He's trying to win games. That's his job. He's trying to beat the Denver Broncos at Empower Field on a Sunday, and he did it. And he's going to try to beat the New Orleans Saints. And he's going to do whatever it takes that week to beat that team. He doesn't care about Howie Roseman's flub of a first-round pick at this stage. And that's sort of the 2 different stages they come from at this particular time. And when you're a contender, as the Eagles were for a lot of the Doug Peterson era, those things kind of match up and wed. But right now, he's not playing because he doesn't deserve to play. Bottom line.
I'm gonna root for that more, John. That Nick Sirianni doesn't care really about what Howie Roseman thinks. And I know right now it's about Jalen Reagor, and let's just hope that grows with a couple other things and opinions by Howie Roseman. John, I do want to ask you this. It's 14 games now with Jalen Hurts starting as an NFL quarterback. It's 14 games started now. What is your latest evaluation about what Jalen Hurts is going forward?
I've said this pretty much from the start. He's improving. Today, I think, was his best game. I think he's better suited. I think the Eagles thought at the beginning of this season they needed to run the heavy RPO stuff, and that was the best way to go. They're now finding out the best way to go is to set him up with a good running game and let him have clearer windows to throw the football to open receivers. And all of it can look good, and they finally have an identity. They finally have a formula. but I heard you guys talking about the draft and Howie Roseman and going to see Kenny Pickett on Thursday night, which, by the way, he should do. That's his job. There's nothing wrong with it. He's not insulting anyone. I just know what the Eagles want, and they want a top 5 quarterback. They want a top 10 quarterback, and they're not going to stop until they get it. That doesn't mean it's going to be Kenny Pickett. It's always about the evaluation of the player. It might not be anybody this year, and Jalen Hurts is a starting quarterback next year as well, and he's putting points into that column, so to speak. But I think ultimately, the way the Eagles are playing now to win those games that I told you that Nick Sirianni's trying to do, ultimately they don't want to play that way. They play that way because they have to play that way right now. They don't want to play that way, and they're going to look for that top 5 quarterback until they get him. That's just the thought process of this organization. And, that's kind of obvious. It's for most organizations. But this one more so than any other, maybe not any other, but Jeffrey Lurie has talked about having high-level, high-octane offense, whatever you want to call it, throwing, passing offense to be a consistent winner in this league. And that's what he believes. And he's always going to believe that. And he's probably right.
Hey, John, I said earlier in the show, when it comes to evaluating the draft, in particular quarterbacks for next year, I don't want to see this organization end up chasing ghosts. Right now, as we look at it, the word is there's not that so-called elite quarterback coming out of the draft next year. But as you know, between now and the time that draft rolls around, you have these bowl games, you have the combine, you have the individual workouts, and all of a sudden an average quarterback ascends up the ladder to this kid could be your next franchise quarterback, and all of a sudden you end up taking the likes of the next Sam Rosen, Sam Darnold, Dwayne Haskins. So I'm hoping his team is extremely cautious based on his draft history at a number of positions over the last 4 or 5 years, and really think and evaluate this before you use one of those high draft picks where you could get an impact player somewhere else, taking what you believe to be is a future franchise quarterback, and it turns out not to be the case.
Yeah, and that's why I said it always comes down to evaluation. Look, the Eagles, if they could have found a way to get Zach Wilson, that was the guy they would have drafted this year. That was the guy they thought would be a star quarterback. And obviously the jury is still way out on Zach Wilson. You just mentioned some of the names, Derek. Said Joe Burrow was one of those guys who wasn't thought of highly as a prospect, and all of a sudden shoots up the board. It's early, but he's looking like a really good pick for Cincinnati. And you're right. I mean, I can tell you from talking to NFL people, Kenny Pickett's going to be that guy. So it's just a matter of where does he land. And it's not about nothing against Twitter scouts or social media people, but NFL people, like, you keep hearing that name, Kenny Pickett, Kenny Pickett. And he's the guy who was raising up. And that's why they've started their due diligence. If they believe he's going to be a top 5, top 10 quarterback, they're going to draft him. If they don't, they're going to go in a different direction. So it's always about the evaluation of the particular prospect.
John, real quick, last one for me. This one comes from our friend Allison in the chat, actually, that's asking the Eagles to carry 4 running backs. And I'm all for that. I'm with Allison on this one. If the Eagles were to keep 4, who do you think would be the odd man out when it comes to the rest of the team? Who do you think's that 53rd man on the roster? Or 54th, I guess.
Well, I have 77 cornerbacks, and none of them are right. So it's not that they're going to keep 4 running backs. They're not. When I said Boston Scott is the odd man out, he's not getting cut. He's just
okay, I understand that. Yeah.
Jack Anderson, offensive lineman, is typically inactive each week. I mean, they're not going to struggle to find a spot.
Dressing 4 then on game days?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I am here for that. I remember just a couple years ago they had 5 guys. I remember they kept 5 guys when they broke camp. John McMullen, thank you so much for joining us as per usual, as you do after every Eagles game on the live post-game show. And you are, my friend, presented by Mesa Law and Associates need a tough injury lawyer called Mesa and Associates. John McMullen, thanks so much, brother. Appreciate you.
Hey, thank you all.
Appreciate it. John McMullen checking in on live post-game show. There we go. We'll break it all down when we return. And also, I have to weigh in because I haven't said anything yet about Howie Roseman and his Binoculars 2.0. So we'll get into that in a second when we return on live post-game show.